Hi, checking
Hello.
in. Here we are. Good thinking
Hey, hey.
54.
Woo. It's starting to get really serious.
Yeah, yeah. And you are fresh off of the Alps skiing?
The Dolomites. The Dolomites,
Oh,
yes.
excuse me. Dolomites.
Skiing in the Dolomites. It's as you do on a weekend.
I love it. Yes.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
it.
All
Love it.
right. So, podcast about marketing trends and all the good things. One day we're going to record a professional intro, and you won't have to hear me say that off the cuff anymore. And it's going to be so exciting for everyone.
It's coming. It's coming.
Yes.
All right. So lots to dig into. We're coming off of the Super Bowl, but there's so much conversation and you've shared a lot on that. We'll hit on it a little bit, but I think we just start jamming and digging in. So much to dig into. Okay, so we're gonna do similar format, dig into each category. I'm gonna do my best to show some things on screen. We'll see how that goes. And yeah, let's dig into it. So culture. I'm really intrigued by this, the comment gold mine. I think this is fascinating. I'd love to dig into it. Obviously, our buddy Matt again weighs in, of course. He's got such smart insights. And then really is like, what do we think the long-term play of this is going to be? I was like, is it this direction? Is it this direction? Is it that direction?
Oh, that's good. That's a really good question. And like, I think that this is like, so for me, like it's just forming. So my brain is like really wrapping itself still around this as a concept. So I'm not sure I'm in a 3-year, 5-year goal, but yeah, to give context. So one of the things that was interesting, I was reading this post on LinkedIn that I linked to about the person that it was talking about how really it's the comment section that is going to become like the big thing for creators or like Substackers, but also like beyond Substack, right? And I've been seeing this and noticing this. I've shared culture study number of times so this was Coco comment, and I thought it was really interesting. So she was talking about this creator who basically she makes Heather Cox Richardson. She's it's political, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
there's
Yeah.
obviously a lot of people who are in politics, and like there's a lot of comment juice in politic posting, so like not super surprising. But she essentially like posts all of her content for free, and then the paywall is the comment section and people kind of posting about this. And I've said this before, like in culture study, which is another Substack that I link to a lot, like they're actually like the entire concept of culture study is the comment section. Like it'll just be a prompt like, hey, let's talk about X. And like that's the whole article. Like there's no article. It's the people talking about it and sharing and conversing with one another. And it's not just like posting your own top line thoughts. You're then like responding. I can't like wrap my mind around it like on a personal level. Like dealing with the comment section is like so mind blowing to me. But one of the things that's beautiful about it is like as creators kind of see this happening, I think they're seeing that they actually don't really have to manage the content section, like the comment section. It's like people are enjoying the kind of camaraderie,
Yeah.
common interests, and things like that. Obviously, like you have to kind of find your people, but like that's what these creators are doing. These creators are basically saying, like, hey, I'm finding you your people, I'm attracting these people, and then now you have access to these like-minded people. Like another one I think I mentioned it in the post is Total Rec. Or do I mention that one in the
No,
article?
culture study, and which I am not showing anything because there's nothing really to show.
Yeah,
Oh,
you can't.
YouTube. Yeah, their new community. Oh,
Okay, well, another one, and I'll link to it in the show notes,
yeah.
is Total Rec. And like, I get there, like with that, it's like people, it's not even like prompts that the person is asking there. It's just like people are commenting to just say, hey, like, has anybody, like this morning, somebody wrote, like, hey, if I'm going to Barcelona and I want like a phone lanyard, who's got recs of like things that would be
Yeah.
nice? And obviously she's collecting like a kind of an aesthetic collective, right? So they're all like in the same aesthetic collective. And so then her like commenters are also in that like aesthetic mindset. So
Totally.
they're not going to be coming in with some like lame, like Amazon rec. Like that's not this group, right? And so like that's what people like about it. And I think it's so interesting. So I say that like, you know, YouTube obviously I think is interested in this as they recently just launched a comment section ability for people to do this. Because before it was just like you comment and you kind of always have the ability, like even in Instagram, to like battle it out, right? In the replies.
Right. And Instagram, it's hysterical.
It's hysterical and it's also like kind of toxic and like not very fun. And it's mostly people fighting. And I think what I think is so interesting about these comment sections is that they tend to not be fights. Like it's not like, because people are paying to be there, you're not like often paying to be part of something that you hate. So
for sure.
Like
for sure. Yeah.
It kind of creates this interesting world where you're paywalling it in order to kind of like allow some safety to be created, right?
And there's a buy-in.
There's a buy-in, yeah. And so it's
which is great.
Like, yeah, like I see Emily Sundberg, like she also like if you want to join the Feed Me chat, you have to be a paid subscriber, right? So you can't join the conversation unless you're a paid subscriber. She has quite a wide variety of followers. Like she's obviously amazing and like has collected kind of a diverse group of people based on what she's writing about, because she's writing about business and like a lot of different worlds. But even there, like there's not really people like being mad at one another. It's just a different place. So I think, I think this is a fascinating place where people are kind of really making their money. And where does it go? Like, I don't know. I think give me your thoughts.
I mean, I think that's the thing is what's really happening is they're creating communities. Right. So no, I think that's what's so rad. Like it is a very curated, whether it's aesthetically driven, like whatever it is, but it's a very curated. And then there's a buy-in. So like, you're not just going to be an asshole and, just comment, anonymously as you can on the internet. Like you're going to have some skin in the game, which I think is great. And she's creating these communities, or they're creating these communities. And I think, I'm a part of a bunch of communities. And I think that's really interesting. Like, then does it go to Slack? Like to be able to ask somebody that's like-minded, whether it's business-wise, whether it's where you are stage in life, like whatever that may be, curating that and saying, these are our people, at least for this. And then having that as a resource, whether it's a conversation, whether it's, hey, I'm going to Barcelona, whatever it may be, I think is brilliant. I think there's a lot of ways to take it. Slack community, paid travel and trips. Like there's just so much opportunity. What do you want to do with all of these people? And I think we're all really starved for community, which is certainly what we found in Breakfast Club, that people want more of it. And to go through the comment section and have it not be curated, like that would kill it, right? Of like, oh, you can say this, but you can't say that, is brilliant. And I love it. And I'm here for it.
Yeah. I mean, there's two things that I think you're bringing up there that I think are interesting is one, like you're part of the board and other things that are really business oriented. And there's always kind of a purpose to the community, right? Like in the board, it's about like helping other kind of business owners kind of and pairing up and teaming up. And like, there's a clear
like fractional support.
goal,
yeah.
Right. And like, I think with, obviously with the politics stuff, it's like, it's more debate, right? You're paying to debate. And then in the others, you're paying for recommendations. And in the other one, like you're paying for like book recommendations and movie recommendations and all of these things. So I think that's really interesting that each one kind of has a real function. And like, I think if you're thinking about how to do this, I think it's like, what is the function of your community? Should be obvious, but I don't think that's obvious to everyone. And then the second thing that I think is interesting is I can go and ask ChatGPT this very question. And everybody at this point really knows that, but that's not what people want. They want someone who has lived this, done this, felt this, experienced this, Like it's like, hey, I'm going to Barcelona and I want you to have gone to Barcelona and tell me if like a lanyard's a good idea, because honestly, you could just cut a lanyard. So like, if you're trying to not have your phone stolen, that's probably not like, I was like, do I reply and say, get a metal one? Because like, that's what we're worried about.
But bigger challenges.
Yeah. But like, I think it's just really interesting that in this whole kind of that these two things are kind of forming at the same time, right? Like there's this personalized recommendation engine thing that's happening in ChatGPT and other like LLMs. And then there's human recommendations happening, like at scale.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that's really interesting that the two things happen to be kind of emerging at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about this because I think we're seeing organizations or communities that were like Summit's a great example of that. We've talked about them not really knowing their purpose for years. Amazing organization when it started, but then it was like, are we, in charge of a ski mountain? Are we doing an in-person events in LA? Like, what are we actually doing? And they're closing. Detroit's going to be their last one. Is this the future of where communities are going? Much more organic. They know their purpose from the very start because it's almost happening from the people doing it. It's like the curation of the content. It's like what you're doing with this, right? With good thinking. And I think the people are there for it for really similar reasons. And it's like maybe the future of community. So I'm really interested to see this week's comment section.
I did also just activate the Good Thinking chat. I haven't used it, but if anyone's listening to this and has strong thoughts on, what you'd like to be talking about, like let me know and maybe we'll start to test it out.
I love it. All right, moving on. Food and beverage. Hype Mart. I'm so excited for this.
I know. Sometimes I know that when I'm writing about things, I know that you're like, what's going to resonate with you, what you're going to want to
I just want to go. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Japanese convenience stores hold a place near and dear to my heart, but also near and dear to like bazillions of people on the internet. So it's always going to be interesting when they start to do something because people love them. Family Mart's, I would say, one of many, like obviously 7-Eleven, and then there's, what's the other one? I always think of it as math related because my husband thinks it looks like a math thing. So it's like, I don't know. Anyway, names aren't my thing, as we know. But yeah, Nigo coming in as the creative director of Family Mart. And I think it's so interesting because like, to be quite honest, like again, these convenience stores don't really need clout. They have them. They have the clout. Like all of these places are beloved. Like there's so much content. Everybody who visits Japan is like, oh, I'm like my first trip is to the Family Mart, or my first trip is to 7-Eleven, like always. So they hold a place in culture. They don't really need a place in culture. But him coming in as the creative director, I think really takes it to kind of this other level. And Andrea speaks about this, like, and has been talking about from Snack Shop, has been talking about kind of this evolution from like the shoppy-shop to this like hype grocery for a while. I think it's interesting, like there's Happy Grocery in New York, which obviously when we go and do our kind of a retail store, then we'll have to go and see that. But that is all kind of like this aesthetic, right? Like it's all like part of this like leveling up of it's not like cute anymore. It's like, it's really cool, fashion forward grocery store and kind of holding that kind of pivotal place in cultures. Yeah, I think it's really fun. I'm excited to see what campaigns come out. I hope they're really weird and wonderful.
Totally.
What were you thinking about it?
I mean, I just think it's so, yeah. I mean, obviously I just want to go and spend hours and hours there, which I for sure will. But I think it's so cool that it's this kind of very mass, right? Family Mart's very mass. Like it's not this curated, it's a very mass, right? It's a very mass entity, but they're really understanding that curation, that design makes a difference and has an impact even at that level. And so I think to me, it's like when Target got Cashmere, like it completely changed the game, right? Now we're leveling up and understanding that to a completely, newer audience and saying like, this is now the bar. And so I'm just excited to see kind of how it trickles down, where else it goes. I think it's genius. 1,000% here for it. Yes,
yeah,
please.
I think it's interesting to also think about it as like taking advantage of the hype, right? Like they don't really need to take advantage of the hype. They have great shoppers and they're going after a different audience. Like they're clearly trying to get like people, like tastemakers, to go there and like get limited edition products and then get like really like kind of own the conversation even more. So it'd be fun.
All right, moving on to drugs and booze. So I was not in the States for the Super Bowl, so the commercials I did not get. And the commercials that were in Mexico are hysterical, but none of them were
Amazing.
good. It was like some dude frying a barbecue. It was not kind of the most amazing. But I went through and watched all of the commercials, and this for sure was just the most amazing one. So the Michelob Ultra Super Bowl spot.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's so good. Like, it hits for me on like so many levels. And I think it speaks to the prediction I already had, right? Like that people are going to start taking silvers more seriously. And I think, Super Bowl is always an indicator of kind of where we're at culturally. And I think we've talked about this. Like, I think this is really silver's moment. The Silver Bowl is an important thing. Terry was lovely enough to kind of interview me about my obsession with silvers and ask me for my thoughts. But like,
it's a great article. People should read it. It's a great article.
Yeah. One of the things that I said to her is like, there's a repositioning happening overall with silvers in this Super Bowl compared to others, in the sense that before you would have like these old people and they would be the caricatures, and these people are really not. Like, when you watch the commercial, they are like, so they're kind of like brushed off as not serious in the beginning of the spot, and then they're like trying to gain, and they're playing with it, and then it turns out that they're like these badass pickleball players who are going to beat everybody, and they know that they know that they can do that. So you see them challenging these younger people, and then they come in and they're not like a punchline. They are the success story, right? Like, they're amazing. And I think one of the things that's interesting is, I think it does a great job of kind of making the product the hero, right? Like, it's desired. It's like they're trying to win it. It's desirable. They're chasing it all the time. So like, that's great for a product. 2, it positions the audience that they're going after as a desirable state, right? Like, that being older and being kind of having had time to become really competitive and great is like possible, and that they are the heroes, right? These older people are the heroes, and that is their customer. So they're basically saying, hey, customer, you are a hero. So love it for that. And then it pulls in pickleball.
I hoped you were going to make sure to hit on that.
I would have loved it more for the pickleball a year ago. It may have been more relevant if they'd gone to paddle, but whatever. Like, it's more the point. And I think still, like, pickleball while Coast may be going towards paddle, I think pickleball is still kind of
their audience. Their audience, it's the right thing. You might have been there 2-3 years ago, but their audience, it's the right thing.
Exactly. And I think it's just showing silvers exactly how they want to be shown and how they are, like, it's not just aspirational, it's true. And I think that is what makes it so amazing. So I thought it's really well done, and the casting is great, right? Like, who doesn't?
The casting is so good. It's so good. It's so good. Yeah,
they're so well deadpan. Yeah. It's perfect.
It's so good. And I think it opens them up to a completely, and I think it's a yes and audience. Like, that's what I think is really interesting as well. Like, it's a yes and audience. It's not just like, whereas their audience before used to be, I don't know, 21 to, 30. And it was just very, very specific vibe, very specific. Like, you could pass by it forever. And I think now they're opening up their audience, and I think it's relevant to both ends of that spectrum.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I always associate Michelob Ultra with like middle-aged women who are trying to find a beer that won't make them fat. Like, that's my mental association, and like, it's not a great one. So I think that
no, I don't think so.
And so I think, like, what I'd liked it for all of those reasons, because it was like, hey, it actually positioned it as like, these guys are cool, I'm into it. Like, and I think one of the things that I tried to talk to Terry about, I don't know if it made it into the article specifically what I said, but like, it was that one of the things that brands need to understand now is that it's not like, oh, this is a great ad and it's just targeting silvers. Silvers are aspirational to Gen Z and millennials. Who doesn't want to be the great pickleball player who has a ton of time on their hands and is like badass, looking great and like feeling great. Like that sounds great. I'm in. And I think that before it was like, oh, we go after this consumer and we lose this consumer. But that's not true. And that's what I've been trying to say for ages. And I think this ad really encapsulates what I feel like I've been trying to say.
Yeah,
so
100%. 100%. I love it. I can watch it
it
over and over again. All right, moving on to silvers, alphas, and Zs. I'm really in between. Let me know if you have feelings on whether we hit on youthful skin or care blocks. Very different things, both very relevant. Only time for one.
Whichever one you want.
All right, let's dig into youthful skin because it's so top of mind for me and my 10-year-old daughter. I'm excited to see what other things are going to completely take over my medicine cabinet shortly.
My point in this, there were kind of twofold like reasons that I included this in the letter, because obviously there's a lot of things that I don't include in the letter and I edit out in my bid to make the letter not too long. And that's a story for another day, because sometimes I'm like, maybe I should like have a, what got cut section and why.
Cutting room floor.
And why I cut it and why I don't think it's relevant could be interesting. But like, to me, it's helpful to have all of these brands in one place. So you're welcome. Casey did that. I added a few and now you can find them all in one place. 2, I think it's interesting to see this new brand. I think it's called Early. What do we think? I'm not really good at brand
we were trying to figure that out. I think that's what I went for too.
Yeah, which I don't know. I don't love it as a name, but I like the branding. The packaging is super cute and it feels really kind of elevated. Their photography doesn't necessarily say alpha to me. Like it says kind of like, I don't know, slightly young middle Gen Z. But I think that it's trying to kind of do both. Obviously, it's youthful and it feels cool. Another thing that we should talk about one day is this like penchant for Gen Alpha like brands using like this style font for their logos. Like I was like, I could do an unpack of that one day. But I think it's just interesting to see it kind of growing up, right? Like, and everyone trying to find kind of their space. I think the reality is that like it's getting crowded really quickly. And there's a gazillion skincare products on the market for everyone. Bubble, I think, is to me the biggest player in this space and has been for a while. It's doing really well. They do a ton of partnerships with like Disney characters and things like that. Yeah. And they are clearly going after alphas. And then each one kind of does it differently, right? Like this one feels a little bit more cute and granola, but like, kind of Korean vibes, like with the like cute little emoji faces. There's another one that's obviously clearly going after males, which I like, and cool. There's, this one kind of, I feel like is like more edgy, this grit one.
Yeah, totally.
Kind of trying to appeal to kind of 2 genders or genderless anyway. And each one kind of has its own space. So it'll be interesting to see how they manage to compete. And one of the things that I wanted to write about in Sunday's letter is just thinking about how alphas will be really different. I was reading this article. I just started reading it, so I won't be able to speak well to it, but it was an article by the CEO of Coach, and he was saying something that I thought was really smart. He said, okay, Gen Z, you think of them and you always say like, yeah, they were like internet, they were born with the internet, right? Like they don't know a life. Like millennials had a life kind of before phones and, they established them and they're kind of in that middle zone. Gen Z like never had that. So they were always kind of on the internet, right? Like, and so they are digital. That's why they always talk about mobile first, da, 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 da. Gen Alpha will have come up with AI. They will never use search the way that you're using search. They are already using Google Lens to search. They're already using voice search way more than any of us. Like they're going to search purely on AI from the beginning of their brand experience. And so what he was like in the article, it starts talking about like what Coach is doing to try to realize this and position itself for alphas as they come up, right? And I think that that will be an interesting thing as we kind of get into this whole crowded space, is that one of the things that AI is really good at is that, you'll be in there and you'll say, hey, I have acne. It looks like this. It feels like this. My friend said it's this. Like, what is it? They're going to be asking in these conversations. They're not going to be searching there like, alpha teen skincare products, please. Like, no.
Right.
It's going to be
specific,
and they're going to be like writing it in, like giving AI like an essay on whatever's going on with them in their lives. They'll be like, and I got my period, and like this, and then, and it's going to deliver something really, really specific. So I think it's going to be interesting as you start to see these brands come up, is like, as you're starting to build brands specifically targeted to this group, it's like you're not really building for the internet that we have now. You're building for the internet that is like just coming out. And so it will be interesting space to watch, because I think these brands that are kind of on this cusp where they're really already like looking that way, they're going to be the first ones to be like, I need to be ready for voice search. What does that mean for my brand? I need to be able to show up in a ChatGPT search. What does that mean for my brand? Like, that's not an SEO play anymore. It's going to be totally different. And so I would just, even if you're not really into alpha skincare, I would be watching this space like a hawk.
Yeah.
Because they are going to figure it out.
Yeah, for sure. It's the future. And I think it's just fascinating, the brands and the opportunity. And there's so much opportunity in that space that isn't being seized. And that's for another day, but just like capturing that audience and doing it in a way that isn't like stay out of my store, I think is such an opportunity. And the other thing is like, like to keep it kind of light, but you should read or watch the video on care blocks. I thought that was really fascinating. And I think we could talk about that forever, but I think it's going to be really, I just thought the way it was phrased and thinking about really kind of the full, for lack of a better term, like 360 of it, like what the real impact is on both ends of it, was really fascinating and super real. So I love that Bogota is making this happen, and hopefully it'll really, trickle down and the rest of us will fucking catch on.
Yeah, I thought it was
almost
super
made it without swearing.
Yeah, well, was that a goal?
All right. No, never. Retail. I mean, so much to dig into, and I do want to, we'll maybe the try-on thing I think is becoming bigger and bigger, but I think we'll tackle it for another day. We've got to talk about Thom Browne.
Okay. Yeah. So obviously you are aware that I'm in love with Doechii. So we don't need to talk about that. And so when I say Thom Browne won, like, it's very clear that I'm giving her the award for this success. Like, it's not like, obviously his design team, and there was a great video, and I think I linked to it, this video, the behind the scenes Vogue video that was like so fascinating about how she worked with the team. And like, so I really recommend, like, I know I linked to a lot of stuff, but I highly recommend like watching that whole segment. It was fascinating. And she's just so inspiring. But one of the things that's interesting to me about Thom Browne is like, he's been a disruptor from the get-go, and he's really got a very specific vision. And I think one of the things that I like about this duo is that she's very disruptive. She's also always looking to history, right? Like, she talks about the history of hip hop being so important to what she does, and like, it's really part of who she is and who she is as an artist. And then to think about Thom Browne, who obviously suiting is not new, but is doing suiting in such a kind of a new and interesting way. He's obviously looking to history and doing it in his own way. So I think the pairing is just really synergistic in like a really cool way. And, he's done great pop-up stores. He's been, I wrote about him before when it was New York Fashion Week last year. Instead of having a runway show, he had a dinner party, and he had all of the guests turn up in his clothes so that basically the paparazzi pictures were his runway. And it was really cool and very relevant and like really exciting, because I think, we all kind of know that New York Fashion Week is still really trying to refigure itself out. And I think he was offering kind of a new way of looking at it. And it worked because his search just popped off. Data But Make It Fashion is a really fun Instagram account if you're not following it. She kind of goes in and uses her data science background to pull out kind of trends and things that are happening. And she talks about like what's working and what people say is really working, but then actually what really is working. And it's fun. So it's a highly entertaining account, worth following. But you can see that his search results were way up and it worked.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
he delivered the outfits. Like, those were cool,
Oh,
great looks. Like, she pulled them off, but they were stunning.
but I think that's, to me, that's like what's so fascinating about this. And we've, done a lot of this of like matching the right influencer, celebrity, whatever it may be, with a brand. And I think what's so good about this is like, we could have seen it and it could have been, okay, this is great. She's great. She's super relevant. This is happening. Thom Browne, great. Like, it visually looked great. They pulled it off. Check. But I think the fact that, there's more due diligence that was done, and that she really does look at history and talks about hip hop and was really like thoughtful and like driving this. And then the combination of that collaboration between the two of them makes it so much richer. That Vogue video was great, and it just makes it so much more like, that's to me a perfect example of said brand, said influencer, celebrity, whatever, and putting them together and having that really be the right match.
Agreed. I loved it. I mean, Doechii also shows up in the Nike ad for the Super Bowl as the voiceover, and like,
Voice, yeah.
that was a great ad too. But as the voice, she's kind of lost. And here, like, this was really her moment, and I really enjoyed it.
Yes. All right, moving into tech. Lots to discover, but the thing I'm most interested in is brands still matter, because we've done a lot of this throughout our career. So always fascinated to see the newest tech, and whether it's going to be brand forward, product forward, whether they're going to really understand the impact.
And what's very fascinating, and I will share it in the show notes that aren't really show notes, but they're full email, is that actually OpenAI announced a rebrand at the Super Bowl. And so I thought it was really funny, but like, their rebrand is kind of just like a typography rebrand. And love me some good typography, but like, this is not what is going to cement your place in culture, right? And so this post, I used it as kind of a comparison. This one came out a few weeks ago, and it was them explaining how Operator was going to work as an agent, right? So Operator is an agent, and like, so the example I've been using and I'm often using is the travel thing. So, hey, Operator, I want you to do this. I want you to give me an itinerary. Operator should also be able to tell you, like, hey, I'm going to be able to, like, start booking things and start organizing things in theory. But you watch this video and it is just like, snooze.
I mean, who's watching this video, really?
It's really, like, it's painful. And that, like, this was only posted on January 23rd. So any great rebrand, I hope, is already aware that they are going to be like announcing this enormous rebrand in 2 weeks. So this was made knowing that they have a rebrand out. So I don't care what you say, like, that was made with the rebrand in mind. So if that's where we're at, they need a new brand team. Fire the agency and find someone else. And then you see, and I will never be like number one biggest Google fan, because sometimes I'm just like, oh my God, Google, like, get it right. But Google Gemini's ad takes Evan Ross Katz, who's hysterical and like really fun. Again, a must follow on Instagram, in my opinion. You are never going to be like up on culture in the way that you will be if you follow Evan. He's obviously a particular taste, but he's very much my taste. And he posts this meme as like kind of the front page of it, but then you go to the ad, which again is a perfect way to have something that's like, the meme is his style of content, the ad is not his style of content, but he combines the two so that you feel like you're like, oh, you gave me something I like and that I'm used to getting, and then you're giving me some paid ad. Okay, I'm working with this. It's working for me. But then he pulls in, obviously everybody knows that he loves White Lotus. Like, if you follow him, like, don't follow him if you don't want spoilers. But he uses it in the ad. He uses Google Gemini to pull up an immediate itinerary for how he's going to get this actor to spill the beans on what's happening in the next season of White Lotus. And so he says, hey, I want an itinerary for 3 days. I'm going to woo this guy, and I want him to drop all the tea on the White Lotus, like season 3 in Thailand. Like, give me the perfect itinerary to woo him over. And it pulls up the itinerary right away. Highly entertaining, highly relevant, like, shows how the product works. and yet is not like, I'm not falling asleep while I'm watching this. So
Yeah.
this was a plus for me.
And it's, agreed. And I think we just need a general PSA for like, don't share about your rebrand unless there's some content that somebody's interested in. Like nobody cares for anybody's like, hey, we changed the fonts, the logos, the rebrand. Do it in a really
I think you
way.
also just like have to entertain people today. And like, are you entertaining type nerds? Like, is that your plan? Like, I don't think that's a great plan. You know, obviously more to their Super Bowl ads and like trying to humanize things and da 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 da. And I'll probably write about it on Sunday. But I really want to go in and just be like, please, new team, please. Yes, please.
Moving on to sport.
All right.
Words I thought I'd never say. The Waste Management Open.
So I literally, you know who my number one source for all sports knowledge is, right?
For sure.
So I'm like lying in bed at 1 a.m. texting my mother, being like, hey, do you think that the waste management thing is something that I should be writing about in the newsletter? And she like writes this whole, she doesn't actually write it. My mom never uses voice memo, but she actually voice memos me to like tell me all about like the background of this and everything. But I'll give you kind of the kind of 2 cents. The name just like, so what people are talking about the name is that they've kind of turned it in. It's called the Wasted Management Open, but like whatever. It's been going on for a while. They essentially did this really, what I think is a very smart thing, but it's, you know, getting a little bit of bad press after last year, is that they built, so in the kind of the course, there's all these different holes, right? And they're all different pars. And they built a stadium around a par 3, which is typically a par 3 is an extremely easy hole. So it's not very challenging for the players and not very entertaining. So they were like, what about if we make it more entertaining? We build a stadium around it and we start to kind of see if people can like do it in a hole in, because it's more common to get a hole in one and a par 3. So people started doing it. It turned into this thing. People wanted tickets to the stadium. And the rest of it is kind of just like a regular situation. But like they've made it kind of this gamified, literally like kind of bringing like a tournament feel. And of course, traditional golf enthusiasts were like horrified, like absolutely horrified. But it turns into like there were beer sales, da da da. Last year, so this is held in Arizona. And last year they had rain. And they've never had this much rain before. And the course was like full of mud and players got kind of into dangerous situations and people were drinking and there was like stuff being thrown at everybody. And it just like devolved into like just your worst nightmare, like worst legal nightmare, everything.
God.
And so this year they promised that they're going to kind of rein in that ruckusness. So they still want it to be fun and they still want it to be entertaining. They still want it to be a little like kind of for the people, but they can't obviously have like things being thrown at players and people getting in danger and things like that. And so last year, like the police came in and cut off alcohol. It was bad.
Wow.
But people love this, you know? So it's like, it's one of those things. So if they pulled it off, then they can like say, hey, this is actually a model for all of these other opens that desperately want an audience to be as enthusiastic as that.
Totally.
And like, you know, they are making, like, they don't have to announce the money they're making because it's a charity and that runs it. But like, they are definitely pulling in a lot of money with this system. So if they can get it to work without devolving into kind of your worst nightmare, then great. And if not, I think it'll go the other pendulum swing where we look at the, you know, the World Cup, like sober, like sports games where everybody is like, okay, in the stadium, it's non-alcoholic beers. Outside the stadium, it's this. And it like is, and that is also happening. So, you know, there's kind of these, again, two worlds happening.
Yes. Pendulum swing. Yeah. I mean, golf will forever, knowing that I know nothing about golf and have very little interest in it. It's fascinating.
No, fair amount because of me. But, yeah.
Well, because of you, fair enough. Yeah. But all I want to do is drive the golf cart and drink Bloody Marys. So it's fascinating to see what continues to happen. Wellness and beauty. Obviously, I'm interested in all of these things, but we just have time to talk about one of them. So fuck the gym.
Yeah, I really loved this campaign. It's basically the whole, like, that's the whole thing.
That's it.
That's it.
It's
That's
great.
the whole. That's the whole commentary. Freaks of Nature is a brand by Kelly Slater. It's a sunscreen brand, definitely for sports. And I just really loved like, the nature of it, and the kind of tone of it, the photography I really like. Like, it's just great. I mean, not like going viral or anything, but I just really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. And I think it's like got a place because I
Totally.
love doing things in the gym, but getting out as well. All right. Travel, Parent Trap.
Yes. I think that this is a really interesting insight. So, in the UK, all of these families, like more families than ever, are being fined for taking their kids out of school, that like not during school holidays, right? So like they take their kids out like on a random week in the year. And this was a really interesting interview where they were saying like, hey, like, yeah, I'm getting fined, but I'm also saving like £7,000 if I do it with my whole family, because like of how expensive and how outrageous it is that so many hotels, flights, da 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 da. It's like everybody going at the same time creates this terrible like situation for everyone where no one's happy. None of these parents want to spend this much money, da 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 da. And I think that there is there's obviously a reality, and so there's probably a governmental thing that they should like look at and see, like, hey, we maybe need to stagger school holidays instead of having them all at once. There's that. But then I think there's also an interesting thing for me. It's like potentially an insight of saying, like, hey, like, how can you kind of solve this reality for parents that are faced with this problem? Like, if you are a local brand, like a staycation where you're not like, these are things that you could lean into, and it's an interesting insight that like every parent sort of knows, but it's really like not talked about, and I think it could be.
Yeah. I mean, I think I have a whole soapbox around it and other layers as far as, because we get hassled if Hudson is out of school. And I think there's also the end of it. Like, yes, there's the financial end of it, but there's also the end of it of like the experience that they're having when they're doing these things. I mean, look at the video that we just watched, the experience. Like, education isn't just sitting in a classroom and, opening up a book. I think to really have schools, have education system really be able to understand that would go a long way.
Yeah, and I've mentioned this other company that again you should follow on Instagram called the 2 Hour School System. That's like kind of like beginning to tackle some of these parents. Like, and I think again, like I think AI and education is going to be huge, and I think it's really going to change the game. I think there potentially will be a major push, especially as he who shall not be named is kind of pulling away money from the education department. I think we're going to see a lot of private players come in, and it's going to get really interesting really fast.
Indeed. All right. No time for fun for the week. We've got a
Yeah, we
meeting
got to run
to
to
go
the
jump
meeting.
to. So you gotta
This was
take a
fun.
look at the own, but there's some really good stuff in there.
All right.
Till
Ciao.
next time.
Bye.